Hello one and all, MMASSASSIN here. MMASSASSIN stands for Market Maker, and welcome to our YouTube channel. Who am I? I'm a professional trader. I'm one of the best traders in the world. I'm quite possibly the best stock picker in the world. I know that sounds conceited, but what we're gonna try to do is impossible. It's the kind of thing that you hear about that cannot be done. So what if one of the best traders in the world was to attempt to turn $1,000 to $1 million? How is that done? It's not easy. Do I play a million things? No. I believe in companies, I believe in certain things. What are my picks? This goes into not trading the way that I trade now. What I'm gonna do now is much more complicated. Instead, trade the way that I used to trade. You should buy and hold if you truly want to go ahead and make wealth in the long term. You should be able to just buy something that you believe in and allow it to become something big. Because to get really great results, you have to believe in something. I used to collect Time magazines when I was a kid. And there was this one issue that I always come back to called Tightness of Industry. And it spoke about how Henry Ford created the middle class, among other things. You know, he knew the future was cars, but people couldn't afford them. You had peasants. So he came up with an idea of paying people so much more than what they were making in anything else for doing regular labor, knowing that they would give them back a whole year's wage just to get that car. That whole idea is a scam. But it forced everybody else to bring up their wages. The reason why the United States is the economic superpower that it has been for so long is because he forced those wages up to be able to sell his own vehicle. But that same special edition of Time magazine spoke about Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and the story on computing. Now, this was the 1990s. This was when Steve Jobs was not in the picture because it was fired in 1984. That got me to get interested, and I read books on it, and then I saw this one documentary called Triumph of the Nerds. And when I saw that documentary, it had interviews with all of these people that were part of the industry. All these people that had seen the beginning of computing, when they were doing it in the backyard, when they were doing it in literally, as people say, in a garage. And I came to the conclusion that the reason why computing was not moving forward in the 1990s was because somebody like Bill Gates could never come up with an original idea. It didn't matter if Intel came out with USB, nobody would implement it because the status quo worked. So Apple was dying. When Steve Jobs got fired, Apple almost died. It was on the verge of bankruptcy. It was weeks away from bankruptcy. Weeks. The day that Steve Jobs got rehired, I told the world to buy Apple. I believed in that company and I cared about nothing else. It was worth nothing back then because it was about to die. The only reason why it didn't die was because Steve Jobs fired everybody. He stopped everything. They were making printers, they were making cameras, they were making all kinds of things. He stopped all that and he created that one little thing, that Bondi Blue little iMac. Well, first he put in his operating system that he had been working on the side. He kind of like had a plan to get in there. And today is the most valuable company in the world. 10 years later. During that time, I was very bullish Apple. And I went to the one event in 2007 was the Macworld. That was the day that Steve Jobs held up the first iPhone. Back then, BlackBerry owned the world. This brings us into the part of the story where I tell you what it is that I do now. I believed that BlackBerry was dead and that Apple would now mathematically, I had no qualms. I believed that Apple was going to be the most valuable company in the world. For sure. I knew it day one. This phone cost as much as a computer. Yet everybody needed it. The sales could be insane. They could own the world, and especially since they worked on high margins. Because Apple was always a high margin company. And I knew that BlackBerry was dead. And I kept on betting against BlackBerry, and I started doing this little thing, options. With an option, you can buy a contract at a price that you think it might fall to, called puts. And if it falls to that level or below, you make money. I bought and I lost. I bought and I lost. I did it for 2 years because BlackBerry kept on ticking along until one day it collapsed on the day of earnings. And I had my first 3,000% profit. To me, that was incredible. Oh my God, I made 3,000% in one day. Believe it or not, that is not that impressive nowadays. How could I do that? Because that option that you can buy for 25 cents. Why is it worth 25 cents? Because nobody thinks that it's going to fall to that level within that time. So it has a very low value. But that option, each option controls 100 shares of stock. So you can buy with $100 what would seemingly be perhaps $100,000 leverage on a company. And all you can lose is that $100. I was hooked. I was hooked on options. And what did I do with Apple? Anytime Apple fell, I knew only one thing. Apple would be the most valuable company in the world. After 2007, my mindset was that. So anytime it fell, I looked for the opportunity to buy. I tried to look, when can it fall? Whenever everything went negative or something happened in the economy that made things go negative, I went very aggressively bullish through options. I didn't understand sizing. I lost much. I have made so many mistakes. I started full-time trading at 18 years old. So I know all the things you can possibly do wrong. I used to have in one day 40 different companies I was trading. Back then, the whole thing would be to predict the top 4 gainers. Out of those 40, I would always be able to get the top gainers. Many of the top gainers before it happened. I used technical analysis. I learned how to do charting. It allowed me to predict motions and movements. And I was terrible at it, but I was better than 90% of the people. Now, I'm probably better than 99.999% of the people. But that comes after being in the game for decades and decades and always striving to be better like an athlete. So, what else happened around 2007?
Crank that soul, now I mean you. Crank that soul, now I mean you. Crank that soul, now I mean you. Crank that soul, now what?
I don't know if it was 2007, but it was right around that time. I saw a YouTube video, and this changed everything in my mind. And it showed this go-kart looking thing, this thing that had no body, that beat a Ferrari. I was hooked. I was like, oh my God, lithium ion can do that? So, being somebody who turned out an MIT scholarship when I was 16, I love the idea of looking at what is the viability of a technology. So I did the math on energy density, and I came to the conclusion that maybe the range would get better, that the possibility was huge, but you had to start on the high end. You had to make this thing that could beat this incredible car. You had to start on the high end, not these terrible things that people thought, this go-kart idea for an electric car. But nobody was doing it. Nobody was gonna do it. GM wasn't gonna do it until somebody wrote this secret plan. Before any cars were out, Elon Musk wrote the secret plan explaining what he wanted to do. He wanted to start on the high end and through economies of scale, bring down the price until he could really capture everything. And to me, I was like, oh my God, everybody else is screwed. This is huge. I waited 3-4 years, maybe, for Tesla to become public, and I spoke about it in Traders Playground every single day before it IPO'd. When it IPO'd, I put my life savings into it. Now remember, I held an insane amount of Apple stock, started selling that and putting it into Tesla. It's not about predicting. That is the easy way. It's just buying stock. If you do the math, I bought it $16 pre-split. There was a 5-for-1 and a 3-for-1. It's the equivalent of buying at $1 today. But today it's late. Through technical analysis, we predicted the fall that happened today. If you look on Twitter, I've been speaking months about it hitting this level. Everybody thought I was crazy. And that's okay. But how is it that I can show you what I do? You know what I'm going to charge you for this knowledge? 0. Because if I die, I beat cancer. I had no hair, no eyebrows 2 years ago. I was fighting for my life. And everything that I've learned throughout my entire life will disappear if I die. I have the ability to lose everything and come back because I have this knowledge and this thing that I've done since I was 18. I take my craft from the perspective of an artist. I'm always looking at strategically making myself better. I'm not going to charge you guys anything. But what I will show you is something that could change your life. I would like to give that opportunity to those of us who had to work extremely hard to be able to get there. So I will teach you the math. I will teach you how you can literally turn $1,000 to $1 million within 1 year. I'm supposed to fail. This is impossible.